So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto and Goblin Got Harem. So let's start the series. One day I'm going to be a hero, a young guy said as he gazed up at the sky, which was glistening with stars and two moons. The girl seated beside him was perplexed. What do you mean? She said, her dark blue hair almost blending with the pitch-black night, her face wearing a peculiar, perplexed expression at what her companion had said. But, I want to show her and everyone a hero is what we do need soon. I want her to see that it's not a bad thing waiting for a hero, the blonde child said, pointing to himself as he looked at his friend while holding a white sword and necklace. My mother told me heroes shouldn't be needed for what she is there for, saying that heroes take too long to come, but, he began dramatically, grinning broadly. One day, Naruto, the girl said softly, blushing slightly as she brushed her cheeks. Hey, make me a promise, she said, frowning at the thought of her impending departure. He asked, turning away from the sky to face the girl who was looking up from her ground-seated seat. She chuckled as the child sprang to her level and brought his pinky into view, to which she also raised hers and gently locked it with the young man's. Yes, once you become a hero or work with one, I promise to join. That way you can use a smart mind to help with your recklessness, she said. The child smiled broadly from ear to ear and said, You bet! I promise! My mother's teacher gave this to her, and then to me when I acquire something that only people can be born with. This will protect those we love when we hand it down. Please keep it until I become a hero, he said, removing his necklace and giving it to the girl with a serious expression on his face. He smiled softly as the girl took the item in her hands. The girl dropped her head and put the necklace around her neck, smiling quietly. All right, I will, she said. How does it look? As the girl held the trinket, he laughed and said, A hella lot better than me, ehehe. She saw Naruto and swore she saw something around him, blinking, and thought it was the darkness playing tricks in her head. She wished this night could last forever, but one day they will be reunited and she will be happy with the time she spent waiting for him. With a terrified expression on his face, the blonde youngster mumbled, The moon is very scary, as he gazed up at the crimson moon. Wondering what he meant, the small girl glanced up and said, The goblin story living in one? In response to her inquiry, he shook his head while gently holding on to his left arm. My father told me, something is always watching us there, and those who can sense its presence are the ones that it wants. He felt something gazing back at him through the red moon, as though it were standing behind him and committing a terrible deed. Wants you? This was a confusing yet fascinating story, and the girl cocked her head in bewilderment. As the child sank to the ground, enjoying the grass, he closed his eyes and felt nothing around him. It's nothing, he said, opening them again. Life was dull, but after becoming a hero, he would desire it again someday. Destroy everyone! As a whole hamlet burns around them, a dozen men in silver armor sending beasts while hiding their faces and bodies, a scream cutting through women's tears, a cry of outrage, a scream of men's pain, green, tiny creatures are swarming toward women, performing the most horrifying and repulsive acts to elicit cries of agony and pleading, but all the while, the creatures merely laugh viciously as they hear the ripping of skin and the tearing of cloth. No! Hold on! This is not what I want! A woman screamed in pain as tears came out of her eyes while goblins surrounded her. And oh! To everyone's astonishment, women wearing black bat wings killed men and then pulled them into the forest while cries of agony and death could be heard. Yes, violate the women who choose to aid our enemies, laughed the armored being's leader. He declared, kill the men who served and protected our devils. You will all suffer for your misdeeds. As he watched a woman grip his leg, battered and bruised from the harm her face caused to the creature. The woman sobbed, help me! After removing his foot from her clutches, the man kicked her side and said, asterisk whistles asterisk hey fellas! You have a feisty one here, he said, almost making a joke as the woman looked scared at what he was suggesting. The woman let out a shriek as she tried to kick some of the monsters off her body, but one of them struck her face with its fist, prompting her to give in to the agony and start crying again. He did his best to scream and break free, but he realized he couldn't. Commander! He knows where the child is, said a lone, long-haired woman in silver armor as she strolled down with a man who was literally disarmed. But he won't tell me, she yelled, kicking him to the ground. You hold a choice here. You tell us what our queen wants and we'll leave. The women here will not be these things' brew mothers. Your men, how many are left, will be returned, if you give us the child. The group leader said, raising his hand to silence the screams as the man looked down at the disabled man. The disarmed man glared at him. Unable to let others suffer for him, the boy nodded and begged the man to do it. The stillness was unbearable, save for the women's sobs. The blonde thought he had met eyes with the hunter as he peered where the child was hidden. I would rather die than tell you where, the hunter said. He roared as the armored man stabbed him with a sword. Gah! The child was not allowed to say anything, and his eyes widened in dread. Defiant all the way to the finish, huh? The blonde turned pale as he watched the man take off his mask to display a gratified smile. Because the sounds of people suffering is my lullaby, MMH, he said, closing his eyes as if to support his argument as the screams, sounds of wet flesh, and crackling fires returned. Very well, you made your choice. The man shrugged. The boy begged. Please tell them, make it stop. Make them stop! As he saw the man crying in embarrassment as well. Knowing that he couldn't hate the man, he told the child that they had to protect him at all costs, even knocking him unconscious and hiding him when the attack began. He was the cause of this attack, and he only felt complete anguish because his life was the reason everyone was suffering. Before the armored guy shook his head, the hunter screamed, Please stop, and, please he's not here. He pulled a woman in front of him and began to say, You poor fool, you just don't get it, do you? As he watched her being violated. You can stop this, prevent this poor girl who's barely a woman, to be another horrid creature if you don't, he said, pulling her face to him and pressing his hands on her cheeks to make her appear more attractive. She might be nothing more than this for her life, and honestly, it might be better than what you all did to her, he said. Oh! The hunter could only grit his teeth, so much that it would chip. He's here, he said as the child smiled at the moment. Come here. As the horrifying deeds ceased, the man raised his hands and leaned closer. He said, Where? But the man muttered, What? He essentially put his ear close to the man's mouth and asked him to repeat what he had said, but the commander could not hear anything. Look here! The hunter cried, leaping forward as he chomped into the leader's neck. Before being stabbed by the green monsters and other armored people, he didn't release as he sank his teeth deeper before what little strength he had left pulled away to take at least a third of the man's neck. As he grabbed his heavily bleeding neck, the leader could only cough and gargle blood splatters before collapsing to the ground and gushing out red liquid till he passed out. The small youngster was shocked to see the man who had concealed his whereabouts facing him. He mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," and then closed his eyes and stopped moving. The woman who brought the hunter screamed, "No!" and clutched the leader's body tightly. "My love! My husband Soren, please don't leave me too!" She tried her hardest to dress the wound and apply pressure, but the blood stained her silver armor. "Ill!" She shook as the others gathered around her. "Kill all the villagers!" she screamed as the others stared at her. "The men to the succubus to do what they want. Tell them to burn this village to the ground. Leave nothing surviving. The woman and child will be given to the goblins to breed or be eaten." But Lady Arabella, the child before clinging to her dead boyfriend, she exclaimed, "The Queen can murder me. I want to watch this world burn. The kid too, let them all suffer. I don't have anything else to live for." People soon assemble, dragging the women and children by their hairs or broken body limbs while disregarding their cries and pleading for assistance from the goblins seeing them. The blonde watched, no longer in anguish or grief, but in wrath, as she set each house on fire. The child's heart was fueled with hatred and retaliation as he watched this happen. Everything he had known and loved was being violated and killed by these monsters. His former life was over. He stared at the flames until the sun rose. He was unable to determine how or when he was able to escape his bonds, and as he crawled towards the tiny hole, he viciously punched the one chance at freedom. His hands were bloody as he slowly but steadily managed to escape the hidden hiding place. When he finally broke free and entered the open space, he saw nothing but ash everywhere. Looking at the dead man who had protected him, he said. Squatting down, he gently flipped the man over, ignoring the foul stench he produced as he placed his hands over his chest. Soon, he took off the man's necklace and sobbed. I understand, we can't wait." Realizing what his mother had meant and that waiting was sinful and that waiting meant death. At that point, he realized that he wanted to kill them all. He would make them feel powerless and impotent to stop him, and he would make sure that he killed every last one of them. They would experience his wrath and the same misery that he did. Today a blond man awoke by cracking his neck and saying, "How many more times must I remember that day? How many times will they remind me of my weakness?" He glanced at his hands before signing quietly. A feminine groan arose from behind him. "Mmh." He turned his head to see another person on his bed using the blanket to cover herself. Right, damn habit. He quietly moved towards the floor to pick up his clothes. Finishing everything in nearly a minute, he was already ready. Looking at a nearby mirror, he saw himself. When people first see him, their first thought is always black, as his entire outfit was black with gray, almost silver, accents. He wore black pants with a black leather belt around his waist that had a holster attached. He had a pair of black leather shin-high boots and some guards on the front that had a design etched into them tied to his legs using straps on the back of the guards. He wore a gray, long-sleeved tunic with a black vest held closed using a series of belts, all underneath an ankle-length black trench coat that was torn up at the bottom and had a series of silver fastenings and small chains. The collar of the trench coat had a bit of flare to help protect the neck from the sun, while there was a set of arm guards on top of the sleeves that had a similar design to the shin guards with a black belt tied across their torso. Finally, they wore a set of black gloves, a gray cloth bunched around their neck, and a black leather hat. In order to avoid disturbing the woman, he left the room with caution. "Thank you," he whispered politely as he closed the door. He sighed as he looked at his wrist, feeling pain all over his body that wasn't from the previous night. Damn it! He swore, then reached into his black leather pants and took out a vial. The needle stabbed his neck, felt it enter a vein, and pushed the injection in. A liquid drained into his neck, and he quickly removed the needle. Ah, he moaned softly to himself, his pupils trembling rapidly before he calmed down. 2 more times, he mumbled as the young guy glanced at the tip of the point and noticed a tiny drop of blood. He took a moment to collect himself and wiped his collar, saying, "No more." The man slowly made his way down the hallway to the first level, where he noticed an elderly man at the front desk. He took out a few gold pieces from his pocket and said, "For tonight, an extra if my partner screamed too loud the other night." When the young man had been coming to the inn every 2 weeks or so, he had to bring a lady, sometimes 2, to stay the night with him. "You did me a favor to find my sons." He stopped as the innkeeper took a moment to gather himself. "I can handle the complaints," he said, passing Naruto 2 of the gold coins. "No extra charge," he said. With a gentle expression on his face, the blonde nodded thanks before returning it to the man. "If you can, give the woman in my room food or whatever she desires, she's going to be rather sore." The young man with the blonde hair politely asked the innkeeper who had promised him. The young man left the building to be met by the soft morning sky, which was hardly warm on this typical cold day on the frontier. The blonde observed as the man went to the kitchen, probably to bring the girl something akin to a feast for her body to be in dire need of. Before heading to his destination, he inhaled deeply and then slowly exhaled. Another day, he thought to himself. Those who were awake at this hour, such as regular merchants or adventurers, all whispered or avoided him. The blonde didn't care because he was accustomed to it. Even as a child, he witnessed how others treated him, and he didn't care or want to correct them. He heard metal hitting metal as he approached a nearby building. The sound of metal hitting water was heard as the metal was quickly quenched into a bucket of cold liquid before being pulled up and hammered on once more. "Working on the usual orders?" the young man asked, arriving at the counter to find a short man blacksmithing an armor piece. Wearing a stout blacksmith apron and black gloves, he was a short, robust-looking elderly man with thinning white hair on his head, a closed right eye, and a mustache and beard. "Oh, it's only ya, speak up kid, you're not mute," the man said, turning to face the person wearing the black leather jacket. The blond man grumbled, pulling himself away from his current position and heading to the counter. "Humph," he said, his smile fading behind his coat collar. "Was the order finished, blacksmith?" he questioned. As the blacksmith tapped the paper, the man continued to list off materials, saying, "You're putting a lot of stress on my heart this past week. And it nearly killed my supplies of mercury and silver. You know how hard that stuff comes by here?" he said, taking out a piece of paper. "Silver, as pure as possible, impure iron ore, 10 pounds of hardened copper shells. All right, if I found any ores or contacts for them, I'll get them for this," the blonde said, feeling a little sorry for the situation. The blacksmith grinned at this. Normally, people would say that to get their equipment faster, but this boy is telling the truth. "If you really need me to look for one, send a request to the guild, tell them to get me and pay with that," he said, pointing to a small, short sword that was inexpensive but sufficient to cover the job. "Fine by me, but this one's gonna cost you a hefty amount of coin," the short man said, crossing his arms and nodding in agreement. As the guy waved it away, he said, "I already paid, even extra for the rarity of the materials," setting them in a box Naruto had given him. He opened it to reveal what was inside and took one in his palm, saying, Nice, no residue around the casing, nor any flaws, bah, don't take me lightly. The blacksmith grunted in disgust. Even with the lightest and vague words of how to make a weapon, it's too easy for someone at my level, though you weren't joking about the process being dangerous. I nearly lost my eyes, he said, glancing at the object with some concern before replacing the box's top. The blond man said, Well, it's a good thing you still have them. But keep in mind to burn the paper. And don't worry, I'm going to have my workshop of sorts soon. Don't expect me to ask you to make this again, he said, simply placing the slip of writing on his forge where it burned instantly. If any of my people find out you have this, he explained. The blacksmith said, Very well, and nodded. Will there be anything else? He turned his head and said, No, wait. Did you see any of my people here as of late? Before leaving, he continued traveling till he came to Guildhall, where all adventurers would embark on quests to defeat specific creatures or any other strange tasks they might have posted. Once they finished, they could get their money and perhaps some other benefits. Among the few adventurers he saw, who often handled early chores like patrols or recon missions, he recognized a familiar face and exclaimed, Guild Girl. This guild girl had light brown hair and braids and yellow gold eyes. She was wearing her guild uniform, which included a white dress shirt with a navy vest over it, a long black pencil skirt, a 3-strap black belt, and a yellow jabot. The woman behind the counter smiled as she brightened up and lost the tiredness in her face when he approached her. He laughed as the young man shook his head and the guild girl looked up from her book and grinned brightly. Hey there, Naruto! You're early today, she said. He responded, Had a restful night, but then he noticed a pleasant scent. Perfume? He said. With a flush, the guild girl said, Yeah, it's potpourri. The blonde Naruto said again, Potpourri? And then nodded. It seems nice. Thanks, the woman said with a shy smile as the young man glanced at the wall-mounted items. Nothing really intriguing for his typical fare, not even good monsters to slay, even the lesser ones haven't been placed yet. Naruto observed that the woman bowed subtly, looking embarrassed by the scene. There's not much, he said. Yeah, sorry, all the other good ones were taken or still pending, and the guild master is Naruto? When the young man crossed the counter to where her boss was, he simply waved at her and said, I got words with him, be right back. As he always did on mornings, even though this was the first time he saw her this early. He gives me permission to come, so stay there, he said as he entered the back room and saw 3 people, 2 more women who recoiled at his approach, and the lone male who gave Naruto a kind look and smile. The man remarked, You're rather early. As Naruto walked up to him, he demanded, The ones who didn't return. With worried eyes as the guild master nodded and took a stack of papers. 17. He realized after glancing at the number of papers. How long have they been gone? Naruto said, glaring at the guy. Only a week, he remarked, glancing at another pile of papers close by. Those are the ones from yesterday, nothing has been updated. We have already dispatched collectors to those first 10 papers, so the remaining 7 are close by. This was his job, someone had to bring these people peace. The blond man took the papers and quickly scanned each one, reading it from left to right before going on to the next sheet. Any news on people of my kind? He asked, almost with relief when the man shook his head. This was his job. The guild master told Naruto honestly. As of late, No rumors or requests have said anything. As the young man examined his gloves, which had a sign of an unidentified origin on them. I'll be back quite soon. X after 2 hours X. Tell him this was all I can look for. He promised as the young man saw someone enter the building that reduced the usual talking and bragging to zero. Oh, he got here? He muttered as he saw the person that caused everyone to be silent. Soon after, the young man returns. The guild is a little full, and he enters the area with a large sack. He gently places it over the counter, as he sees the guild girl looking at him, when he gives a curt nod. In addition to his trademark cheap-looking helmet with broken horns on the side that completely encases his head in protective metal, the man Naruto saw was dressed in filthy leather armor with chain mail below. Even though he has frequently been mistaken for an undead due to his dirty look and inferior gear. Goblin Slayer! The creatures turned to watch the guy in black leather speak to them. As if stating the truth rather than greeting, he replied steadily. Hunter! You're back? He remarked as Naruto nodded. He declared. Yesterday, I had to deal with things, disregarding the other's murmurs about what it may be. Might I join you on your quest? Naruto inquired courteously, and the guy stood motionless as though he was taking in what he had said. I only dash, the blonde said. Hunt goblins, and the male merely nodded to confirm that he understood. As the hunter observed Goblin Slayer make his way to the guild girl to make a request, he said, Very well. She smiled and politely explained the situation to him, much like Naruto. The bastards are made for each other, a burly axe raider said behind Naruto. A silver adventurer who only kills goblins and his best friend the crazy hunter, he said, laughing as his friends laughed too. Both are going to save lives, save a village from a rampaging stampede of theirs. What kind of hick place dash? Asterisk crash asterisk as he looked at the guild master, who appeared only mildly irritated by that display. The man gasped when he saw Naruto smash a nearby table with hardly any effort. Take it out of my usual fee. Naruto apologized as he lost his temper, before he saw people moving away from him. He wanted to yell, he wanted to punch that man close to death, but it wouldn't accomplish anything in the long run. Before noticing the table, Naruto's silver-ranked adventurer stated, Ready, your hand okay? As the blonde spoke softly. Anyone who took the jobs before us? Naruto said. No harm. And they left the building. The reality is that everyone in their lives will think, We can do this, this is going to be easy. Or, and I faced them before so it's no problem. However, given his past, Naruto knew all too well that this risk comes with greater pains and flaws. In their world, earning a decent living requires overcoming the typical dead-end jobs to get stronger. Only to succumb to death with ease, Goblin Slayer said. One did. And nothing further was spoken. As the two continued to walk, Naruto sighed, sensing that this would not be helpful in the long run. Okay, he muttered. Mind if we head to them first? The Goblin Slayer nodded in agreement. Let's go, the faster we do this, the faster we multiate those little horrors, he said. Soon, he and Goblin Slayer both accelerated a little, the two notorious explorers in their town hurrying to complete their routine tasks, eradicating goblins with a great deal of hatred. The hunter's fears were confirmed by the time they arrived at the cave. I smell death, he murmured as the young man took in their surroundings. 4 young adult footprints were found at the entrance. No doubt they're dead, he concluded as the two cautiously made their way inside. Stop! It hurts! As he pulled out his weapon, the blonde's eyes filled with quiet rage. He was holding a rustic rectangular saw that was covered in bloody bandages to conceal some writing on the metal side. The weapon was attached to a wooden handle that was almost the same size as the blade itself and was wrapped in a strange combination of rough bandages and brass wiring to keep the user's grip in place. The weapon was designed so compactly that it seemed like the only way to swing it would be a quarter of a foot. The point where the saw and wooden handle met was a strange little metal device that held the weapon in place. He wanted to scream into the cave, but his instincts told him to let the rage and hatred in his heart fester instead, so he clenched his teeth and tightened his hold on the handle. And merciful Earth Mother! They noticed that someone was outside the realm of the gods. It was a girl, maybe a few years younger than him, who was a little distance from a red-haired wizard who had a red pool of blood in her chest, which he saw was a rather large crude stab. Two goblins, repulsive creatures that resembled elderly men the size of children, roared at two newcomers. Naruto simply raised his weapon and used his rectangular saw to cut them without hesitation or regret, all while maintaining a deathly expression. If one were to gaze into his eyes, they would begin to fill with pure delight, as the blood appeared to flow into his eyes. The two made sure they were alone before glancing at the two survivors. Naruto appeared to see the air as he smelled fear and urine, and he dared not confront the problem when he saw the red-haired girl almost nude from when the goblins were going to enjoy what little warmth she had left. Goblin Slayer also defeated two more who attempted to jump on them from behind, easily slitting the neck and bashing one's head with his shield while the other eye was burned from the torch they used. As Naruto turned to face the blonde, Goblin Slayer commanded, "Drink this." She was a priestess, a woman who worships and hunts for the Earth Mother, a goddess that he had heard many people in the town believed in, though he wasn't sure because he couldn't practice religion even if he wanted to. This priestess is a young woman with long blonde hair and blue eyes, and she is typically seen wearing white robes over blue garbs, both of which are laced with golden outlines, and she wielded a golden staff adorned with blue jewels. It was a strange sight, appearing to be a lovely girl in this repulsive hellhole. He murmured, "TCH, damn blood," as the girl became aware that she had been spared. As Goblin Slayer withdrew his blade from the goblin's carcass, she inquired, "Who are you two?" "He is known as Goblin Slayer," Naruto said as his companion merely said, "Two." The hunter then pointed to himself and said, "I am Naruto, the hunter dash." He noticed the girl's shocked expression at his name before he raised a hand and said, "Worry about that later," as he approached her and noticed that her left shoulder had been severely struck by an arrow. "You're a rookie," he said, noticing the porcelain-colored tag around her neck, which indicated that she was either just starting out. Yes," the priestess said, averting her gaze as though she were embarrassed by her position. Her gaze briefly strayed to notice a silver rank tag beneath his jacket before turning to see Goblin Slayer approaching them and possessing one as well. "Gah!" she exclaimed as Naruto ruthlessly tore the arrow from her body, bringing the girl to her side. Two silver-ranked adventurers, with the third highest ranking, indicated that they were veterans on the battlefield. "Sorry, but it had to be quick," Naruto replied. "Drink that antidote Slayer gave you, it will stop the poison," as the holy woman seemed surprised by the information. As both men shook their heads, she yelled, "Give one to her too, please!" Naruto rose as he and Goblin Slayer approached the dying girl. It was obvious to a hunter that the girl was dead. The poison, even at this point in her system, wasn't an issue. Rather, the blood, what little blood wasn't being harmed by the venom, was gushing out of her, and she didn't have much time left. With her last remaining strength, the wizard pleaded, "Kill me!" To show that these two showed her kindness in such a terrible situation, ignoring the priestess's words that they could have saved her, Naruto subtly placed 6 vials in the wizard's body, slowly pulling them out and keeping them out of sight of his 2 fellow adventurers. "Sorry," he whispered to the dying girl, holding her neck down as the slayer of goblins leaned down and carefully, almost gently, inserted his weapon into her neck. They all watched in horrifying silence as the girl's eyes widened at her fatal blow, and soon what little life remained in her eyes vanished. Goblin Slayer simply stood up as though the act of compassion killing wasn't an issue, but Naruto swore angrily. "I hate this!" He had to steal what little blood wasn't tainted for his use later. "Who was in your party?" the creature asked, turning to face the girl, standing poised. The priestess lowered her head and said, There were 2 others, but..." As he stood up, his weapon clenched in his hand once more, Naruto muttered, "They're dead or will be by the time we get to them. However, we can avenge them. I know your faith doesn't see that as a virtue." Before his other hand produced another weapon that the girl had never seen before but whose form was obscured by the darkness, he said, "Luckily, it is mine." Goblin Slayer looked at the blonde woman once again without saying anything. "Any goblins that were huge?" he inquired, and she nodded, shuddering in terror at the recent recollection of what had happened not too long ago. As the 3 members' silence nodded to themselves, she began, "I believe so, however." As the girl paled at the name and nodded, Slayer turned to face the blonde, who also returned the gesture. "Hobgoblin," he said, waiting for her response before continuing. "Most likely the other goblins took it as a guard when they ventured here. We're going to kill all of them. What will you do?" Even though she embarrassed herself on the first trip, the priestess declared, "I'll go with you." Because she couldn't allow her team die that way when she still had the chance to attempt. Naruto stated simply, "There's a chance you'll die. Anything to offer to this party?" he inquired, as Goblin Slayer tilted his head slightly to hear what she had to say. There was silence, but the girl did not respond or dispute it since the hunter felt that it was sufficient. "I can heal your wounds and use the holy light blessings to illuminate the darkness." The girl bowed her head in embarrassment as the wither-armored man inquired, "How many times?" "3, but I just..." She turned to face the wizard's corpse and said, "Only have 2 more times," in a shameful tone. The fact that there were so few blessings and spells demonstrated how dangerous it was to be a spellcaster or even a cleric, as your abilities drop to almost 0 once you run out of spells. Naruto's eyes narrowed at that. Without a doubt, she attempted to heal the body while the poison was still present. Normally, it could work if the body wasn't attempting to poison as well as being stabbed. All she did was prolong her pain. "Then don't waste them," Goblin Slayer said, interrupting Naruto as he was about to reveal his genuine self. He needed to control it, wasn't around like-minded individuals, and had to keep his opinions to himself. "You. About 20 over here. My weapon is good for this cave, as long as I don't use its other form," Naruto said, raising his left hand as the Goblin Slayer paused and then spoke again. "Very well," Goblin Slayer said, nodding, then produced a big stick with the tip wrapped in cloth. He then found 2 stones to strike against each other, causing sparks to stick to the cloth and ignite it, creating a makeshift torch. He handed it to the hunter, who took it with ease, then proceeded to the closest goblin and inserted his hands into its flesh. Priestess screamed, "What are you doing?" when she witnessed the man carefully wringing out flesh between his palms and letting the blood drip out. "We need to keep your human scent with this, to prevent them from noticing us," Goblin Slayer said, rising to his feet with lots of goblin blood lather in his hands. "Goblins have a keen sense of smell," he said. "That's dash," Goblin Slayer went on. "It's the only effective method," turning to face the girl, who recoiled at the thought of what he was actually saying. At the mere concept, the priestess's face went pale. "No, wait, you can't possibly dash." The hunter glanced in front of the girl as he took the back, forcing Goblin to take the lead. The poor girl might have nightmares because she lost her friends and had to wear a monster's blood to cover up her odor, but the smell was making him hungry, to be honest. The group saw something that horrified Priestess, the remains of a teenage boy. The only reason Naruto could tell was because the face that was spared from damage was able to tell him that much, even if it was only a quarter portion. His hand was nearly a yard away, along with any evidence of anything that belonged to him. The young man took a long sword in his hands, barely raising it over his head. A small scrap was made. The idiot didn't realize he would lose his grip when the blade hit the short ceiling, and Naruto muttered, "Too late," as he knelt next to the corpse and examined it before tasting the blood. "Poor kid, blood taste of fear," he whispered to himself, feeling the subtle taste of that sensation. "Blurg! Goblin Slayer!" Naruto dragged the blade to the man, who paused to examine it after the young witnessed the poor girl throw up because they couldn't bear to see what appeared to be the boy's bowels nearby. The man said, "Too long to swing in caves effectively," as the girl who had finished throwing up turned to face the two. "How did this happen to us?" she pleaded, unable to comprehend how they were surrounded, while the Goblin Slayer just raised his palm, at which Naruto quickly pointed. He said, "You were attacked at the back." And then he revealed the fire, which illuminated the back of where they had come from and revealed a second tunnel that was only partially visible in the shadows. "In the cave you rely on a torch, so you never think to take a second look behind yourself, even more so when that caught your eye," he said, tilting his head to reveal an odd stick and bone effigy where they saw the attack begin. "The goblins have good eyesight even in the darkness. They counted on your blunder to attack both sides easily," he said. "That's dash," Naruto added. "They're not the brightest of creatures, but they're not complete fools either," before continuing. "The fact is, all creatures who can attack aren't stupid. You just underestimated them." Priestess was shocked by what fighter and warrior said about the goblins, how easy the task will be, even though it felt like her world grew larger. "But the next time you know not to let a small insight like that pass you by," he said cryptically as Goblin Slayer spoke next, both of them preparing their weapons. "As you can see, that obstruction is the work of a shaman." "A shaman?" asked the priestess. "Listen, as the hunter told you, goblins aren't the brightest creatures, but they aren't complete fools, powerful spellcasters who often lead other goblins. No doubt the attack was its own teachings that guided its kind," he said, turning his head to the girl as the next words were more for her benefit than his. In a sudden explosion of movement, the slayer of these repulsive creatures took Naruto's torch, ignoring a dull "Hey!" and threw it behind them. When the two adventurers noticed that the light hardly revealed a shadow's foot, they quickly ran away, swinging their weapons at low angles to stab or behead two goblins. 10. Goblin Slayer remarked as they were already halfway there. As two men dragged the monsters' bodies to her location, the blonde woman appeared nearly alarmed. "Can you two see into the darkness as well?" I watched as Naruto nodded and Goblin Slayer shook his head. When Goblin Slayer left his sword in the goblins' stomachs while stabbing them to keep them in place, Priestess looked concerned. "What about your sword?" she asked, feeling a little sweat drop on the back of her head. They pulled the bodies on top of one another and started to get ready. "Practice," was their only response. He spat out. "We're leaving it, too much blood to hold on to it correctly," and took a feeble-looking spear in his hands. "This was a scout, the rest are at the bottom," he concluded, pointing to a tunnel that sloped downward. Before driving the wooden pegs into the rocky ground, he grabbed 2 more pieces of wood and attached ropes securely on both ends. Simultaneously, Naruto pulled out a bell and said, "Madman's hearing." He rang the bell in a whisper, and the priestess saw that Naruto's face was twisted in disgust and wrath, but she heard nothing. "6 girls," she said. Watching them, the girl realized that they were far too accustomed to this. The fact that they remained composed in the face of death and darkness around them made her realize that, in fact, something was wrong or broken in them, but she chose not to speak it because she needed to remain here where most would run. "Get ready," the 2 told her as she moved quickly, being careful not to make too much noise. "Yes, sirs," she muttered as she followed them to the point where the fight would end. They entered the tunnel and squatted down till the man in full armor paused for what seemed like an eternity. After the girl just replied, "Yes," the man looked to Naruto, who was grinning savagely and holding a glass vial in his mouth with the tip pressed to his teeth. "Use the holy light here. Once you do, run towards the entrance and don't wait for us," he said. The priestess said, "Yes, sirs," nodding before closing her eyes and extending her staff. "O merciful Earth Mother, please bless us, the wanderers in the darkness, with holy light. Holy light!" she invoked. In just 1 minute, the staff flashed and shone brightly in the cave's darkness. The hunter and goblin slayer wasted no time in taking advantage of their blindness to attack, and there were sounds of screeching, perhaps due to the staff's intense light. As he hurried forward, Goblin Slayer counted 6, 1 hob and 1 shaman. The shaman goblin aimed its staff at him, and crackled lightning from the tip of its staff while using some primitive yet uncivilized language. "Shaman will be stabbed by Slayer. These won't be enough to stun the fat bastard, so," Naruto exclaimed, drawing out his left weapon, his eyes turning red as everything seemed to slow down. "Shaman will be stabbed by Slayer. These won't be enough to stun the fat bastard, so." He held a large silver cylinder with engravings of beasts around the outer layer, and beneath the silver barrel was red-colored wood. The handle was covered in tattered bandages, which were discolored, indicating that it had been used for a while. The silver piece on the handle, which resembled his weapon, appeared to be slow for Naruto. "Boom! Boom!" Naruto yelled. "Move back!" as the heads of 2 goblins, who were still perched atop the girls nearby, exploded, prompting the other goblins to follow suit. As the light dimmed, Goblin Slayer said, "Fall back!" and utilized this opportunity to run away. Naruto yelled, "Let's go, up and at 'em!" before snatching the priestess by the arm and running away. "Hey!" exclaimed the priestess, but judging by his expression, the chase's intense excitement was making him relish every moment. When he released her, she saw that he jumped and turned her, the plan. As the hobgoblin arrived, she hurriedly recited, "O merciful Earth Mother, please bless us, the wanderers in the darkness, with holy light! Holy light!" Fortunately, the spell arrived just as he was about to realize the trap. Completely blinded by the light, it staggered forward, ready to crush the girl. No, you don't! Naruto dragged the girl away while his partner killed the fat goblin swiftly by stabbing its head with his weapon. Naruto then handed him a glass vial of brown liquid, which he could easily pour over the monster's carcass. The priestess reddened at Naruto's closeness to her face and questioned, "Are you okay?" "Yes, but I can't use the holy light anymore," she replied, fearing that she would be of no value in this battle for survival. Goblin Slayer said, "That's fine, we have other alternatives," as he continued to pour the liquid over the dead body. He then turned to face the two goblins that followed them, saying, "See ya," before kicking the dead hobgoblin in the direction of the smaller ones. He then rolled and tumbled along the cavern floor, knocking them into the smaller goblins and covering them with the same brown liquid. Boom! Naruto then pointed his gun toward the corpse. Boom! Goblin Slayer and Naruto mumbled, 13. 14, as they witnessed the other goblins being destroyed by fire. "What was that?" inquired the priestess. Naruto answered, "Gasoline," before turning to face the girl. "A friend made it on my request, although not worth the price for what others sell it," he muttered, oblivious to the fact that Goblin Slayer had dispatched two more goblins behind them with ease. By pointing out, "But the kidnapped girls. The fire won't spread that far out, if it's just 2 or 3 corpses," Goblin Slayer said after completing his murders. "Missed one." Naruto raised his left arm and squeezed the trigger, causing the blonde girl to scream in agony as the loud sound emanated from his silver object. She turned to see a goblin blasted into the wall with a tiny hole in its head. She understood it had its back exposed, probably intended to flee. Goblin Slayer remarked, "Not bad," as the priestess examined the strange gadget in the blonde hunter's palm. As Naruto inserts the weapon into his jacket, revealing a tiny loop designed just for it, she asks, "What is that?" The girl was told by Naruto, "Nothing, just a hunter's tool, just like everything else." The priestess addressed the two elite adventurers. "Are you going in again?" The Goblin Slayer replied, "No," while he picked up a stone axe from the ground that had once belonged to a goblin. Suddenly, some more goblins appeared and attempted to jump on him, but it was in vain because he had already heard them approaching and was anticipating an attack from behind. He then used the stone axe to hack into the remaining goblins, with the final goblin suffering the fate of having the stone axe lodged in its head. 18. As the three of them went down the tunnel, the girl had to use her mouth to breathe in order to block out the smell of burnt flesh. As she saw someone priestess had assumed she would never see again, she exclaimed, "Fighter!" and hurried over to a naked girl who was drooling and whimpering a little from the brief ordeal she had to go through. "It's okay, you're going to be okay now," she said, struggling to contain her tears. For the first time in his life, the blonde felt terrible as he peered between her legs and saw so much blood that it made him ill. He then heard Goblin Slayer smash a neighboring chair and noticed a wooden door, and Naruto came up, his eyes bright with laughter as he got his saw ready. The priestess screamed as she glanced over their shoulders and saw that there were 4 baby-sized goblins in front of the 3, but they weren't the same as the ones they had killed. "Well, I'll be damned," Naruto murmured. "Children?" Goblin Slayer stated. "They multiply fast. If we had waited longer, there would have been 50 and would have attacked. You were lucky." As he went to the infant goblins with a big club. "Are you going to kill them?" the priestess questioned fearfully. "Of course I am," replied the Goblin Slayer. "Those who survive will learn from their mistakes and adapt. There isn't a single reason to let them live." As if the devil had materialized in front of the kids, Naruto said, "Besides, it's fine," and shifted his coat to reveal a nasty grin that made them shudder. "They kill, they only know sadism, and more importantly, they always start the pain first," the priestess said. "You would kill even good goblins?" I suppose there could be one if you looked really hard, but in the end, the only good goblins are the ones who never come out of their holes," the Slayer said after the two hesitated for a bit. Naruto grinned as he saw one of the kids grab a tiny stone and then dash in the direction of the two humans. "And if they did," he began, lifting his saw, "none of them deserved to be alive in the first place. Even their children as well." The priestess stood there, her heart breaking at the sounds of children dying, the blonde hunter laughing heartily as he relished every moment, the blunt sounds of broken bones and blood leaking. It was all too much for her already wounded soul to handle. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her arms as the cruel world revealed to her the truth about the adventures no one told her, the truth about the ones who don't survive. After what seemed like a lifetime, Goblin's Slayer and the hunter emerged from the secret caverns, their swords dripping blood as they made their way across the rough terrain. Behind his helmet, you can see Goblin Slayer's left eye lighting red, and Naruto's insane smile with his right eye glowing a deep blue. "That makes 22. HMHMHM. Naruto swallowed his laughter as he turned to face the man. "I'll take them back and meet you for the others later," he said. The girl was afraid when he put a hand on her shoulder, but he had a worried expression on his face. "Stay here with your friend," he whispered softly as the girl felt better and moved to Fighter's side to speak softly to her. They claim that it happens frequently. The girls are abducted by goblins who are raiding neighboring settlements. As the priestess's words reverberated, Naruto, who was driving a carriage full of the fighters and violated females, turned to face them with worry because their lifeless appearance had depressed him. He then made a note to speak with them directly soon. A group of novices went out to kill goblins only to end up being the ones killed after being used as playthings by the goblins. The rescued girls who survived joined the temples out of desperation. When Naruto glimpsed Fighter's eyes, he realized that her hands were clenched into fists, not out of fear but out of wrath. A tiny smile appeared on his face, and he snapped the reins to get the horses moving quicker so he might at least spare her soul. A journey in which they lose all of their friends and return home, never to be seen again. Every day in this world, all of these things occur. Is it true, though? I don't know the answer, but I can be sure of two things in the end. First, I'm an adventurer, and second, a day passed as Naruto entered the guild hall carrying a large case to the counter. "I got it," he said, as the guild girl nodded and let some of the stronger male guild members take it from him. "It was all I can find for both the female wizard and warrior kid," Naruto said, adding that he has been doing this ever since he arrived. He would be able to help the guild and the families of the fallen adventurers whenever he could by finding anything to send back. It was fairly good work, but all he needed was enough to buy some bread. The rest were sent back to the families for a respectable funeral so they could bury their loved ones. "Thank you. I'm sure the families will greatly appreciate it," the guild girl said with a sorrowful nod. Although taking a life was a common occurrence, it didn't lessen the pain. The fact that Naruto was the only person in the entire town of adventurers who did this, every day no less, made her heart go out to him. The girl was stunned by the revelation of his background, but she quickly narrowed her eyes when she comprehended what he had said. "If I couldn't even find a drop of blood, I'm sure my mother would disown me," Naruto murmured affectionately. "Oh, Mr. Goblin Slayer," she began before they saw Goblin Slayer enter. "You shouldn't say things about yourself," she said. Naruto waved to him. "Still alive?" But the guild girl giggled a little at the unusual sight of Naruto behaving normally around someone. The three of them talk, or at least two of them attempted to, with the stoic one. "You," he muttered, shocked when the priestess approached them, not hardened at all, but still nearly innocent as they saw her. "Still here?" he said, stopping their conversation to see someone Naruto was certain he would never see again. As the hunter reminded her that the name was still strange for her to utter, the girl nodded and then bowed her head to thank him for his assistance. "Thank you, Hunter, I mean Mr. Naruto," she said, turning to face Goblin Slayer. "And you as well, Goblin Slayer," she said. Naruto was startled and nearly blushed as the girl removed her dress and revealed metal chain mail underneath. I bought chain mail, like you suggested," he said. "I see." Goblin Slayer was perplexed as to why she spoke to him, but Naruto smiled back at her. The hunter was somewhat relieved to be shown to be mistaken. This girl shared his concerns, but instead of breaking, she developed. With an almost nonchalant shrug, she asked, "Are you two going to work together again?" As the Salyer turned to face the girl, he added, "Depending on if the guy is able to find a goblin request or not, I'm solo ing today," which caught Naruto off guard. "Are you coming?" The girl smiled brightly and determinedly even though she couldn't see Goblin Slayer's face or the complete face of Hunter Naruto. "Yes." Naruto carefully raised his arms and gazed at the back of his hand as he opened his eyes to see a wooden ceiling welcoming him from his sleep. He whispered, "Those dreams again." Even though the blonde wanted to sleep late, he had work to do, so he lay back down and enjoyed the cozy warmth of his bed. "Naruto?" a soft voice asked at his side. He turned to face it, and found a naked woman sitting upright with concern in her beautiful eyes. "Oh, Padfoot waitress." This Padfoot waitress is a young Padfoot with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, lupin ears, and a tail. Although she is currently naked, she typically works as a waitress in a traditional medieval uniform and boots. "You okay?" she asked, sliding to him and pressing her chest against his side. Naruto gently sighed, putting a hand on hers and tying it together. "Yeah, I'm fine." "What about you?" he asked. She kissed his cheek and said, "I'm okay, but don't lie. You were screaming at the end when we made love. And we agreed, after the first time we did that while you were like that, if I didn't want to help I wouldn't. It hurts, but I will do it again for you. Please tell me what's wrong." Padfoot waitress shook her head and said, "No, it's more than that," before giving him a back hug. "My memories of before I came here are distracting me," he said. "It's okay to be distracted every once in a while," stated the Padfoot waitress. "Whenever things aren't going well, we would want something to get away from it, if only a little." As he bowed his head, Naruto uttered, "Padfoot, I'm not sure I want to go back. I want to stay here. It's so much simpler, so much less death and pain." In a tremulous voice. "I know, you don't have to suffer alone," softly replied Padfoot. "I'm here for you, whatever hurts you, I will do everything I can to take it away." With his hand on her arm that was still around his shoulders, Naruto said, "I care for you, my lady." "I agree," Padfoot said with a gentle smile, "and I'll give you back everything you've lost." Instead of saying, "That's why I'm afraid," Naruto looked up at the sky and said, "I should go. Your housemates will not be a good thing to do in the morning." taking himself gently from her grasp and leaning towards the floor where his clothes were. However, Padfoot abruptly pulled him back into bed, even though her heart was shocked when the man deftly pushed her down to ensure that he was in a good position to retaliate. "Sorry," he muttered as he saw her terrified face. "Stay with me," Padfoot whispered. "Just for today." "You're sure?" She hoped he would relax and spend more time with her. "My friends aren't coming, they both have long jobs to do. It's the first time in a long time I'm alone," she remarked. As he felt her hand snaking towards his lower area, Naruto whispered, "I see." He said, stopping her hand. "My heat cycle is—" But he sighed with pleasure as her touch kept moving. "You're still recovering, Padfoot," Padfoot whispered. "Shhhhhhhhhh, relax." And then she switched positions to be on top. "I'll take care of everything," she said. Naruto's breathing became hard as he tried to steady it. "Padfoot." As she quickly landed on him, Padfoot chuckled. "Bafufu, so lively this early in the morning." Naruto's face was red and still recovering from accepting a helping hand. "I guess asking you to stay with me the whole day is too much?" Padfoot said softly as she pulled up her nightgown to better cover her breasts. "So," Padfoot said as she placed 2 plates of food, one normal-sized and the other nearly 10 times as much. As Padfoot appeared concerned, Naruto murmured, "No, I can't. I need to talk to my old partner," adding, "It's routine work from my home. They need to know if I want to come back or need more help." Padfoot sadly murmured, "I see," but she felt Naruto's palm pass over hers. "Don't worry, I'll come back to you, I promise," Naruto reassured, barely grinning. Padfoot murmured, "Pinky promise," and looped her palm around his so that their pinkies were connected. The woman appeared surprised and somewhat delighted at this. Naruto had never attempted to discuss his background or his people before, so this small opening made her feel finally accepted. "I shouldn't do this, but would you like to come with me to see my companion?" he asked. Really?" With a gentle smile that warmed the beast girl's heart, Naruto told her. "I don't mind," adding, "I could use the company." Alright. I'll get changed right away." After breakfast, Naruto reminded the beast girl, much to her dismay. The two moved slowly through their meals, and although he would have begged for seconds, he refrained. After the lady changed into a plain white dress, they left a large house and traveled to their destination. The blonde glanced at the woman who had clasped her arms around his left arm and was strolling contentedly next to him. It had been over 6 months since they had been this way, more like friends than lovers. Of course, Naruto didn't mind at all. He felt happy around her for the first time in a long time. "Patty," he began softly, "I wish to ask if there's something you want for a gift?" he asked abruptly as the woman gave him a strange look. "It's almost a year since we became intimate. I heard from my old comrades that we must celebrate it," he asked. With a finger to her chin, Padfoot asked, "Really? It's been that long?" I haven't really thought about it, to be honest, but just being with you by your side is already a gift for me," she answered with a smile. The hunter thought he frequently stole too much from her, so he questioned, "Are you sure? Not a trinket or something for your home?" When they came to a dead end, Padfoot halted before the blonde could make up her mind. "I thought," she began, but Naruto whispered as they leaned closer to the door. "Absolutely, you're all I need," Padfoot said with a bright smile. As the wall began to change into a skull-like visage, he began, We are born from blood. And undone by blood. As it opened its mouth wide to create a doorway, he turned to face his sweetheart and said, "Let me do the talking, he's a bit old-fashioned." Padfoot nodded hesitantly. "Okay, he's not dangerous, is he?" As he assisted her into the mouth of the doorway, Naruto candidly remarked, "Compared to me or the active hunters, he isn't that strong, but he is a bit more dangerous than some adventurers." "Hey, alchemist, you here?" the blonde asked, looking into a dimly lit room that contained a workshop. "Must have just made something," he said. Clang! When Padfoot noticed Naruto battling a cane with his strangely formed weapon, her ears perked up. As the guy swinging the cane stepped back, Naruto's voice was filled with cold frost, saying, "Stand down. She's a friend." A young man about Naruto's age emerged into the dim light, wearing a black tailcoat that was tattered and a brown vest that was wrinkled. His black pants sagged, and his black shoes looked uncomfortable to wear. He had medium-length brown hair, blue eyes, and a fringe that was fanned outward. As the teenager in front of Naruto stopped staring at his lover, he became enraged and said, "I know the rules, I'm a fucking hunter noble." Passing him bottles of blood, the most recent ones from the Goblin quest he had completed with GS saving that beautiful priestess. "Magic blood, not dash, oh please, can you find a C or B rank winged beast for me to bottle its blood?" asked Naruto in a humorously irritated manner, while Padfoot looked shocked to see the man she had been intimate with for 6 months act less stoic and stone-like. "If so, please point me to the general direction to get it, or perhaps you could," Padfoot asked. The alchemist swung the vials out of Naruto's fingers and clicked his tongue in frustration, saying, "TCH. Sit down." As the young man behind Naruto grabbed a few surgical instruments, she said, "What's he doing? Wait, don't dash." As the tips of his instruments gleamed purple, the brown-haired teenager calmly replied, "I'm etching the pattern inside of his bones, he won't look ugly," promising that if he allowed me to carve his skin, the procedure would require less blood. The alchemist snorted at that, and the blonde shook his head. "Most people in the frontier see that as a warning for dangerous people," I said. He then put on a pair of special glasses to view the blonde's bones. "Sure, if you want to see it that way, now hold still and don't squirm," he replied. "What runes do you want set in?" he said. As the two were ready to begin, Padfoot asked, "Runes?" with a little anxious expression. The rune maker spoke. "Runes are made for hunters for a certain edge, not powerful as actual runes, since we're using a language that hasn't really been spoken in centuries," Naruto said with a grimace as his right hand gripped his forehead, breaking the silence. He made a spinning, cold screech as his hand slipped. Sorry for that, I forgot that your skull is denser than most," he said. The teenager worked more quickly but cautiously as Naruto murmured, "Hurry! This time, Komark, air, and moon, there, you should be good to go," the alchemist said, sighing as he continued his work. "All right, just keep still. Never get used to it," Naruto murmured, nearly whimpering, which made Padfoot laugh. "Any leads on the blood you need?" the blonde inquired, adjusting his hat in the hopes that it might ease his headache. When the alchemist answered, "I'm still working on it, but I'll let you know," he proceeded to a cabinet and opened it to display a large number of potion bottles filled with vibrant but uninteresting liquids. He took a handful and handed them to Naruto, saying, "Here, take these, you'll need 'em for your next job." Looking at the fluids, Naruto thought, "You're actually taking that name seriously?" Not pouting over the fact you're sent to help me anymore? The alchemist snorted angrily. Of course I am. I'm not a slacker when it comes to potion making. At the last minute, the seasoned hunter said incredulously. You kept it? The blonde suggested. You should consider returning home to join the stitch makers rather than joining the front lines. As he watched his lover gaze at the teen's workshop and noticed the picture that contained 10 hunters, one of whom was a stern-looking Naruto. Hinata asked me too, the alchemist stated, standing beside Naruto. She's asking for your health. What should I dash? He said. I'm going to the meeting place. I need a scroll, the blonde remarked, and the teenager nodded. I'm fine and not going back home, she added. With a silent nod, the alchemist approached another cabinet and opened it, revealing a large stack of rolled-up paper. He then took one out and handed it to Naruto, saying, Here. Recalling that her roommates were explorers who informed her of the limited supply of magic scrolls, Padfoot exclaimed, Wow! Aren't those super rare? It's nothing to be that surprised about. It's just a magic scroll, made with hunter blood and knowledge, the alchemist replied. Less powerful but gets the job done. As she glanced between the two, Padfoot exclaimed, Your people can make them. Why haven't you tried to make them for the cities? This could dash. We don't need the praises of man or anything. We do things to save our kind from the demons. We shall not give secrets where people can misuse them, she said, stopping as the aura of both hunters darkened and they spoke almost as if they were possessed or brainwashed. Their voices blended, echoed, and nearly reached her ears as she stood in mild fear. The auras disappeared as Padfoot relaxed further. Okay, she replied timidly. Goodbye, Mr. Alchemist? Naruto hummed in delight as he heard the man's name mutter. You could tell her, since you're not a hunter still, he said. It's Kuromu, he said, appearing somewhat irritated but ashamed. It's really true, Padfoot replied, walking behind her boyfriend as they walked, looking at the ground. You hunters really say your real name to people. The blonde glanced at the woman and nodded, realizing that was an odd thing to do. In this world, people have two names, their job, title, and their true names. This is because true names have the ability to influence the gods, so if you pray for health and safety using one true name, the gods will be more than happy to grant you those things. However, the opposite can also be true. If you curse the gods, you will bring them misfortune, even death, if you pray fervently enough. With his reflection hardly visible, Naruto gazed at a barren window. However, hunters are not affected by the true name effect. The blonde understands why hunters detest that way of life. They discovered a way to prevent the gods from interfering with their lives through science and arcane arts, and they were prepared to die by their own luck and abilities, disregarding any additional abilities or good fortune that might be bestowed upon them. Fear the old blood because we are born of it, it made us men, and it undoes us. In many respects, they are more monsters than the animals outside, which is why hunters are viewed as dangerous. Their most revered adage is that their blood has abandoned the lives of others by turning into creatures while choosing to live as people. The blonde wonders if leaving home was ultimately a wise decision because of the fictitious names they could give them and the stories of hunters deceiving people to give them money and power because they cannot be cursed by the gods. Naruto? Padfoot waitress noticed Naruto stopping and looked around and realized it was the same spot she met him all those months ago, the day he was so broken, and chose to reach out to him, realizing he wasn't as scary as the stories her mother told her about them. Naruto. She started as the blonde broke his train of thought to look at her. What are the hunters really doing? To kill the demon lord, to keep people safe from beasts, and to find our peace. Naruto murmured, pausing to consider his next words. He recalled the hunters' aspirations. So why don't they collaborate with the kingdom's armies or adventures? Why keep yourself hidden from a world that believes you are adversaries or made up stories? Padfoot inquired because she had never understood why the other hunters that went by treated the villagers like trash or were interested in killing them, while she witnessed Naruto performing good work as an adventurer. While we have a few goals that align, ultimately our reasonings for those goals differ, replied Naruto. The happiness that we hunters seek, those monsters took away from us, and so we do whatever is necessary to take it back. We don't care how long we suffer, as long as we kill them all. As she noticed the emptiness in her lover's eyes, Padfoot felt her body grow chilly. Even if it meant you all would be called enemies or worse? As the clouds enveloped his body in their shade, Naruto mutely remarked. We choose our path, some of us, younger than we should. Perhaps to inform the woman he had cut off from the light to which she had grown so accustomed. I don't think that's fair. What do you mean? Naruto asked, staring at Padfoot bewildered. I mean, you've been fighting like this your whole life. I can understand why, but I have a question for you. What was your childhood dream? As the woman appeared perplexed, Naruto questioned. I swear I won't laugh. The woman appeared a little nervous. I wanted to be a princess, she whispered haltingly, expecting a laugh or perhaps a snort, but all she saw was her lover's gentle smile. Gazing up into the once unremarkable sky, Naruto muttered, I wanted to be a hero. Afterwards the guild girl was standing at the front desk, and she smiled a little wider at his arrival. Morning. Naruto nodded politely, and the woman nodded back earnestly. Any adventurers you need me to retrieve? He asked as the woman only smiled kindly, shaking her head. None? At the thought, the blonde asked quietly. None today, replied the guild girl. After giving the proposal some thought, he sighed deeply and said, Very well, please tell Priestess and Goblin Slayer I am going to be away, before collecting his bag and bringing out a scroll. I got plans, he said. Wait, there dash, Point Omega is being met. To the guild girl's surprise, Naruto remarked as the scroll ignited and he abruptly vanished. A scroll, she added, pointing out how blatantly Naruto used it in public despite the fact that it was a costly thing to sell. I hope, she began, observing the angry expression in his eyes as he disappeared. He's okay. XXXX. After being carried to his destination, Naruto emerged in a burst of light and opened his eyes. He looked around to make sure it was the appropriate spot and muttered, Okay, time to find them. Before stumbling forth. He heard lovely music playing when he was in a forest at the tallest hill to glimpse the majority of the treetops. Well? In Ocarina? Naruto hummed to himself, hearing the sweet high pitch and low tones of a wind instrument, the vibrations making a wonderful sound that was admittedly pleasing to his ears. Tayuya? He added. As he looked up, he saw a woman with wild red hair staring down from above. The music stopped. She screamed, Oh Naruto, about fucking time. Leaping to her feet as she approached him and pocketed the instrument to a homemade wrap on the side of her jacket, which was identical to Naruto's outfit but for being brown and covered with red spots of dried blood. Why are you in this place? Naruto asked the girl with the red hair. She leaned forward and cupped his chin to her hand as her face flushed with pleasure. Traded my shift with Sora to take your report on the frontier. Had to see my rutting partner here. She murmured. MH, you seem like a man who just fucked a mother. How about a quick dash? As his hand began to generate more force and one could hear bones straining to break, Naruto's hands gripped Tayuya's hand and said, No. Alright, I was just fucking about. Tayuya laughed, and Naruto released her. News? She used a blood syringe to pierce her hand and then injected the red liquid into her. The goblins and other beasts are on the rise on the frontier, Naruto said with a sigh. At least for now, me and another adventurer named Goblin Slayer who helped kill a nest and where I sent some of the new recruits after taking the rest to the church. Oh yeah, I heard about that fucker. He's the real deal when dealing with that kind of shit, Tayuya said. Also, the new recruits aren't anything special. Worse, they can be our comfort girls or future stitch makers later after their blood transfers. How about you? The flute musician was asked by Naruto. Well, you're in luck. I got 3 targets waiting for ya. One of them you know pretty well, she replied. Well? Naruto's eyebrow went up. She handed Naruto the first slip of paper, and his eyes widened in shock. Yeah, he's your former teacher on magic items and hunting hunters. Don't be surprised if you know him, she added. He gripped the paper and scowled at her, saying, Lies! He would never turn on us. Losing his normally cool demeanor, Naruto said, Itachi refused to join our sworn foes. According to the paper he was holding, warning, Hunter's Lord Noble Hunter Itachi, former, rank of Hunter, Gold/SS defective to the Canehurst recently kill at all costs. Look, I fucking hate it too. I don't want to believe it either, but orders are orders, Tayuya murmured. And there's more. Apparently, he joined a pair of brothers that visited his area, but never reported back, so you'll have to kill them too. Did he defect because of them? Naruto snarled. Hell if I know, which is why you can beat the shit out of them for answers, Tayuya mumbled. Whoa! Answers! Naruto pressed his arm over Tayuya's throat, causing her eyelids to flicker in agony. As the blonde let out a scream, Tayuya managed to speak. Father! Gaskin! Cough! Fucking! The brothers were ordered to kill another hunter, and since they sent a magic letter claiming Father Gascoigne was helping them, we believe they were dead. Concerned, Naruto recalled an older man caressing his head when he was back home. But he's retired. Isn't it against the rules? Remember, it doesn't matter? Tayuya caressed her neck and whispered, Could you at least pat my cheek before you deep-throat me, prick? Besides, he is a veteran for a reason. Anyone who lives past 50 is a goddamn monster even when they become domestic. She stared at him. Naruto turned to go without saying anything. What the devil are you doing? Naruto turned and saw nothing, then growled in excitement as he felt thin hands around his neck. I'm doing my job, unless you've sent other hunters here. I'm the only one who can complete the hunt, he muttered. Come on, you must be dying to have sex with someone other than those villagers, don't you? I bet they can't stand more than a few minutes before they slump from pleasure, Tayuya said in a whisper in his ear. When Tayuya heard a clicking sound, she raised her hands and shouted, backing off, realizing that Naruto was brandishing a gun on her navel. Be wary, in case there is any of them as the target, she added. Without saying a word, Naruto moved the gun away from her tummy, turned around, and left. He said, standing motionless while Tayuya gave a sorrowful nod. I'm not broken. I left to do good work rather than wait around, he said. Believe me, Whiskers. I know that all too well. the red-haired woman murmured, looking up as she sighed and hearing only the winds blowing about her. She took her own scroll and said, "Home base," before disappearing into a dark purple inferno that consumed her entire being. After an hour grinning, Naruto clutched a big weapon and just utilized the scope to get a closer look at the terrain. "No leads," he remarked, but then he noticed some female adventurers strolling through the forest. When he turned back to them, he noticed something. A lead. An hour passed while he was stalking the girls from his perch high in a tree. He soon saw the female group leader pick a corpse, but he said nothing because the goblins were all around the girls. "If I leave them, I can just let the goblins hurt them and find my lead from the leftovers the monsters would leave," he thought, reminding him that this would be the best course of action and causing him to use his items less. Oh! As they began to swarm, the leader was rendered unconscious by a goblin above them. "Get the lead and leave them!" 2 goblins were holding the priestess down while she screamed. First comes the mission. The ranger's presence could be clearly heard as the blonde's wrath gradually boiled. "TCH, damn it! Bang, bang, bang! Get in the cabin now, you fools!" As the blonde took incredible sniper shots from his position, which was about 10 meters distant and higher than the goblins, Naruto yelled at the girls who had been saved. "Wake your commander and keep the door shut!" Without arguing, the girls led their leader away from the goblins and toward the shack, shutting the door behind them. As he leaped from branch to branch, taking more shots as he attempted to descend, Naruto exclaimed, "Goddamn, I just made these bullets!" He then heard a clicking sound as he pulled the trigger, grinned, and threw the gun into the air, grabbing the butt and slamming into the closest goblin's forehead, leaving blood and pieces of skull on the dilapidated shack wall. Watching the little bastards flocking around him, he remarked, "All right, I got 50 left," and pulled out his special saw like a weapon before knocking on the shack's door and saying, "You stupid fools, okay?" "Yes, but our leader is still don't care," Naruto said, drawing out a small glass vial. "Hold your breath if you see any gas enter the room," he said, slamming the glass to the ground, breaking it into pieces as a blue haze spread throughout the room. "Blue moon poison," he said, stepping back and sitting on his rear end as he noticed the goblins slowly approaching him. To the goblins, Naruto squinted. "That's it, get closer." Soon, as Naruto tallied the numbers, more and more goblins got interested in killing each other than in Naruto himself after one snatched a nearby rock and killed its nearest neighbor. As the cloud cleared, the blonde exclaimed, 41, 34, 12, 5, as he got up and hurried over to the others to start his little carnage. "A poison to make you so happy to see your friends you killed them," Naruto said, describing the atmosphere as nothing more than the insane goblin's deranged smiles. The poison he was using was a rare drug designed to make enemies go crazy so he could have some time to flee. But it also works well to ward off monsters so he doesn't have to use too much of his own supplies. He walked over to the shack and knocked on the door. "They're dead," he murmured as the door opened and he reached for his leather jacket to pass it. A girl hurried past it as he moved away, and the girls gradually emerged one by one, clearly stunned by the goblin's own carnage. "You!" Naruto gestured to the anxious leader. "Your sword!" and curled his finger to signal her to give it. The leader instantly responded as she gave him the sword, which he took and inspected, asking, "Old blood of the church, where did you obtain this?" The blonde gazed down at the scene and said, "An old man deeper inside the forest saved us from a terrible monster." He was alive and had two others who came to help, but we needed to take down the goblins. Although now we would have. Naruto nodded and handed the sword back to her, saying, "Learn from it. Do you remember where in the forest you saw this old man?" "In that direction," she said, gesturing toward the north. He continued walking in that direction without saying anything, but he stopped and said, "Next time you think about goblins being easy, look at her," pointing to the naked priestess who was staring down in embarrassment. "And then make your choice," he said. Before Naruto eventually left, the other members of the group also cast their eyes downward. He had a hunt to finish. The blonde said, barely reaching the spot the girls had told him, as he watched the woodland begin to grow darker. "Crack, oh!" The voices muttered as Naruto turned to face a steel helmet with vertical metal slits. "Goblin Slayer," he said, swinging his blade in the direction of the sound coming from his left, and was startled to see a battered short sword slamming its semi-dulled edge into his homemade weapon. As the two stepped back and exchanged serious looks, the man returned the greeting. "Hunter Naruto. The guild girl told me that you were out," he said. The blonde replied, pulling his jacket up to reveal his face to his friend. "Follow-up meeting with a fellow hunter, what are you here for?" It hardly took a second for him to say those words, which caused the two of them to utter the term, "goblins," in perfect unison. He then turned to face his neck and saw a person who was clearly taken aback to be beside his companion adventurer. Even though he had been working with Goblin Slayer for a while, Naruto introduced himself as Lady Priestess, bowing his head to the girl who did everything in her power to stop him. "Unfortunately, I have dealt with the goblins and saved an idiotic team of adventurers on the way," he says. Goblin Slayer remarked. "I see," as his companion behind him was concerned because Naruto's expression didn't seem to be in a pleasant mood. "Are you okay, Sir Naruto?" As the blonde sighed, the holy girl inquired. "I have to do something for my fellow hunters," the blonde said, gesturing toward his direction, while the young hunter balled his hands. "It might be a clean-up job," I said. Despite the girl's obvious confusion, the Goblin Slayer understood Naruto's meaning and said, "Let me help. Since everything is going to die or will be dead by the time he's done," the blonde answered. "I shouldn't," as the man in the tattered armor remained motionless. He turned and said, "I offer," and the priestess nodded. "And she also wants to help," he said. "Don't charge in without my permission. Hunters are also in this. Don't want you to be in the crosshairs of my team," the blonde said, just rearranging his jacket to cover his face and nodding definitively. They nodded as Naruto led the way into the forest. However, as they approached, tension increased as they noticed sword marks and blood slowly rising. "This is bad," the priestess murmured, her face showing concern. Naruto murmurs, "An axe?" upon noticing the weapon that delivered these specific blows. "That means the old man is okay," he sighed, while the others appeared perplexed by his statement. "I received word that an old hunter was here to help," he said. "Is he trustworthy?" The blonde turned his head to smile as Goblin Slayer questioned. Before they heard groaning and prepared for war, he said, "One of the best, old hunters, is basically immortal on the battlefield." As they approached the sound, they came across a bloody area covered in a lot of gigantic leaves. "We are made from blood," he said. As the priestess prepared to perform a miracle to save his life, Naruto moved and undone the camouflage to reveal a hunter dressed exactly like him, with a massive gaping cut mark exposing his chest. An asterisk cough asterisk undue by blood, the voice murmured. Before turning to face the blonde, he reassured the girl that she would not be using them frequently. No, I already used a blood vial to coagulate my wound. It would take some time before I can properly move again, he said. You're Minato's son? We were attacked by a beast and my partner escaped out of fear of facing him. Father Gaskin bought me some time to heal, but he took a lot of damage, the blonde said, looking at the guy without emotion as he nodded. Please, help him, he said, taking the blonde by the arm. As Naruto repositioned the leaves on his torso, he trailed off. He's one of the people who gave us outsides any respect. Is he? Inquiring as to whether he was too far gone for his medication to take effect, the blonde religious believer, with a sigh of mild pleasure at not having to bury another brother in his combat, Naruto remarked. Passed out. He took a lot of damage before we came. Follow me, we have to make sure if the two are alive, he continued. As the blonde stood motionless, Goblin Slayer questioned, Will the one who left face repercussions? The quiet was sufficient for the goblin hunter to nod gravely. I apologize if I go too far, he said. No matter, the blond man remarked as they passed some dense trees and came upon ruins that initially appeared to be a maze. Follow me, he said. Soon after, the three of them heard what noises that sounded like someone chopping meat into a fine paste. Goblin Slayer was standing in front of the girl when Naruto turned to face him. He raised one finger and said, I will go, before pointing to the corner where the sound was coming from. His partner occasionally nodded when the blonde did so. He armed himself with his usual saw-like blade and a strange silver device in his left hand, and he walked down carefully to avoid any misplaced sounds leaking out of his position. He saw something that made his heart sink slowly, and as he approached what appeared to be a strange graveyard with trees and numerous stone figures that might have been headstones, the blonde realized, I'm too late. He thought, as the person he was looking for was in the center, raising his right arm slowly but carefully as he struck a nearby body with a heavy axe. Gah! He snarled, stopping his movements and making Naruto grip his weapons more tightly. Beast all over the shop, he said, standing erect and turning slowly to face the blonde hunter. Soon you'll be one of them, sooner or later, he said, his frown deepening as he saw his face, with graying, disheveled hair, a tattered white blindfold that only added to his terrifying appearance, and a big black hat to conceal the rest of his face. Both the blonde and the older hunter who imitated him rushed forward, roaring, Forgive me, Father Gaskin. Don't get close to him and add me from the back. The two were within striking range of one another until they rolled forward, with Naruto kicking the ground hard to avoid a heavy upward slash from the insane man. The blonde hunter stopped taking side steps and went in with a right sweep of the man's chest, spilling out massive amounts of blood, shocking the girl nearby with how much a man can bleed, and still go on as he ignored the attack and tried to cut Naruto down with the swing of his axe going downward. He's strong, Goblin Slayer admitted, watching dozens of stone fragments hitting the air from the man's powerful attack that shattered the stone ground they were on. The man screamed as Naruto blasted his forehead, but unlike the goblins, the blonde could see from the corner of his eye that the shell fell without penetrating the skull. Now! He should have let the arrow pass through the man's hand that held the ace he had. Gay! Naruto growled as his instincts told him to go pressing the attack, but he knew that this hunter's strength was abnormal by their standards compared to others he fought. When the blonde saw the large gash in the enemy's chest, he stumbled, lost focus, and howled loudly while spreading his arms wildly. The blonde landed on his feet and jumped forward, thrusting his hand into the man's chest, ignoring Father Gascoigne's cry of excruciating pain as he reached deeper into his chest and felt the object. "Sorry," was all Naruto could say as his two friends approached him. "Thanks, your arrow was able to let me do that attack. He was in so much pain that he forgot that I can go for a visceral attack," he said, firmly grasping it as the man coughed up blood that covered the blonde's eyes. The blonde looked sad and pulled his hand away. As the blonde raised his bleeding hand, the priestess repeated, "Visceral? A critical skill to be a hunter, when stunning them with good amount of damage or this." He lightly pat his gun. "Then we go for a cut that we made prior and reach into the flesh to tear off anything we can grasp a hold of." He looked at the motionless body of the seasoned hunters. "Normally, I was supposed to pull out his heart, but I crushed it instead. I felt that he deserved that much to look complete at least than in pieces." The priestess mumbled in terror. That's. It gets the job done, yeah." Naruto turned to face them, oblivious to the figure stirring gently beneath him. "I never enjoy taking down my own friends," he said. As she removed her gaze from the body, the devout girl asked, "What caused him to be like this?" Naruto said, "I think he went mad with blood." As he was aware that there were only 3 possible outcomes: being blood drunk, going insane, or being driven insane by a particular kind of blood. His eyes widened when Goblin Slayer drew aside and stabbed the corpse with his short sword. "You dash!" Naruto began, but he stopped when he noticed the hunter he had just killed slowly stirring up as the man growled, and soon mist rose from his body. "Hold on!" Naruto said, picking up the girl who blushed at his bold gesture and running back as a strong aura made the 2 males barely able to withstand the essence because the hunter in front of them was now a beast rather than a man. "His blood made him into a beast," the blonde said as his mercy brought about this. Father Gascoigne, as he was officially known, was a bipedal werewolf creature with the same hair color as a man. "Is he still dash?" Goblin Slayer narrowly escaped the beast's upward claw strike as he crashed into the adjacent wall, sending him flying. "No, he shouldn't be. Even if he were, he'd be a walking corpse." The blonde turned to face the priestess and asked, "You have anything beside that bright light spell?" The girl nodded and said, "Use it when you think we need it, be absolutely sure." Which he repeated as the blonde sighed and took his saw in his hand. He then adjusted the metal handle on the weapon, and soon it was fully extended into a makeshift sword with a loud clicking sound. He slid beneath the creature, grabbing with both hands and slicing its ankles deeply as blood gathered. When the monster attempted to stomp on his body, the blonde used the weapon's teeth to bite into a wall corner and pull himself away. Naruto immediately got to his feet and repositioned himself, saying, "Shit," as he looked down and saw that his left leg was cut. He easily avoided the attack that the beast attempted to launch with its claw hand, and the blonde used the shaft of his weapon. Priestess remarked, "He's leading it," observing the blonde's steady pace despite minor wounds. "He's used to fighting beasts like this man," she observed. "It won't go through." Goblin Slayer gritted his teeth as the move was difficult, but the blonde stared at the guy as he rushed in right away, short sword in hand, and sprang up to stab the beast in the back. When he heard a crack as his hand dropped the weapon, he screamed, "My saw!" The mouth! And used his free hand to stop the beast's mouth from opening. Realizing what he was doing, Goblin Slayer grabbed the blonde's saw cleaver and climbed upon the beast's back as Naruto released his hold, causing the beast to unclamp on his wrist and bite the young man's head, until Goblin Slayer stopped it by forcing it to plunge its jaws first into the saw's sharpened teeth. "Push!" Naruto commanded as he and Goblin Slayer pushed the monster's head in the blade, causing it to gurgle in agony as they moved the object side to side to ensure it worked. Blood spilled on Naruto as they gradually penetrated the monster's flesh and skull, ignoring its gagging and howling sounds until it stopped moving and lay limply on Naruto's body. The blonde shakily got to his feet as Goblin Slayer shoved the creature away from Naruto. He looked at the creature and said, "Why didn't you fight it harder?" As if Father Gasconage could hear him, even though he was the one who knew the temptation the best. Asking, "Are you all right?" Goblin Slayer, as the two were ready to approach the priestess, who aimed her staff at them, Naruto stoically answered, "Yeah, I'm fine," then glanced at his limp right hand. "This fix is going to make a healer back at the town really happy," he added. A light emanated from her staff and swept over their bodies. "Protection! AWWOO!" The beast cried loudly as it fell to its knees, its body covered in mist once more, and now ashes, until a thud could be heard and the body of the old hunter lay there. The two turned to see the beast crash its claws into a wall of pure light as the two limbs snapped from the attack it did. Goblin Slayer's cool exterior belied his disbelief as he whispered, "It was still alive, how?" "Hunter's blood can turn us into beasts, depending on what blood you killed on your first hunt before the ritual to make you a true hunter. Father Gascoigne killed a 5-decade-old werewolf lord as his blood fusion. Those bastards are relentless and supposedly can pull themselves from the brink of death to kill its prey," the blonde said, gently flipping the man over to reveal a kind smile on his face. "Come out now," Naruto cautioned as the two adventurers turned to face the unconscious hunter, who was walking towards them with a foul expression on his face, tossing a young man who appeared to be somewhat younger than the priestess on the ground. The hunter said, "I found the prick who abandoned me," as Naruto turned to face him. "We were sent to kill AC-, he said, pausing to look at the two adventurers before continuing. "But we were led to a trap where a monster got me bad and also nearly killed him, while this fucker led us for dead," he said, and the teenager shook his head. Clutching Naruto's knees, he exclaimed, "I was gathering information. I was going to come back. Please, Lord Naruto, you know I would never dash." Whack. When Naruto glanced at the man's coat and saw that he had no vials on him, he nodded and said, "Shut up, you mug. Father seems to have used his entire blood supply before he lost to it," he said, displaying his own silver contraception to the group. "Naruto, with your permission, let me execute this traitor." "No! Please don't. I don't want to dash." Whack. I said shut up. The man was about to argue when Naruto's vacant eyes glared at him. "Well, Hans," he murmured, then turned to face the teenager. "Let him go," he said. The blonde pulled the trigger as the young hunter was shot from the back of his head and slumped to the floor with an unceremoniously thudding sound. "Sir," he said in defeat, undoing the young hunters who appeared happy and thanking the blonde with an embrace. As he walked away, Naruto drew his weapon, and the priestess's eyes widened as she attempted to step into the path of the weapon, but the other hunter grabbed her to stop her. Naruto kicked the corpse forcefully and spoke the words, "Death to all who abandon their brothers," with a controlled hate. "We lost a brother because of your cowardice," Priestess cried. "Why did you do that? How could you?" As the blonde nodded, the final team member muttered, "It's the way of the hunters, we hold strict rules and blood vows, victory or death are our only choices," adding, "He left us to die while we tried to survive and finish the fight." He reached for his own silver weapon, but Naruto stopped him. "Put a hand on the man's shoulder and say, 'You did well, go home with father's body, let his wife and child bury his body, don't take the life of your own brother, just because you survive when others don't is not a shameful act, you become better than today,'" Naruto added. "Sir, may I ask for a few days for personal time to tend to Father Gascoigne's family?" the man said, lowering his head as the priestess swore she saw tears falling to the ground. Before leaving a scroll for him to take home, the blonde stroked his back without responding. "We're leaving," he said to the two who nodded, the priestess glancing over at the young hunter's body, and the sobbing one they had left behind. A few hours went by as they made a halt in a nearby town where Goblin's slayer confirmed that goblins were dead and met the adventurers Naruto had previously rescued, who thanked him but disregarded him because of his bad attitude. "I'll escort her to the temple, you can go home," Naruto said as he arrived at the town's gates, looking at the priestess. He made this promise to the goblin slayer, who didn't leave until the girl assured him that she would be okay with the blonde. After getting that assurance, he left the party to go back to his house and make sure someone was safe. Naruto moved silently in front of her, leaving the two blondes alone. "Does it happen often?" the girl asked him, pausing as she went on. "That you have to kill your own people from becoming monsters or breaking rules?" He heard her inquire from behind. He turned and the blonde said, "I don't know about the Earth Mother religion, but what happens if you break your tenets?" with a gentle glance down. "But those who willfully break the serious ones are cast out from the temple and even lose the love from the Earth Mother entirely," the girl said, reflecting on her own training as a sister to uphold her vows and having to pray to the night to redeem herself because she was constantly making mistakes. The brunette nodded as he gazed upward. "People call us monsters, human traitors due to our name being able to speak as freely as we can breathe air," he began before looking the girl in the eyes. "But we're human too, we want a world where we can see flowers and live in perpetual peace, but how can we risk our lives or do things that most people cannot if we can't even uphold our sacred rules and oaths? If someone breaks them, then they think they are above the law and our rules. What will happen then? Radicals and schemes that undermine our goals for the annihilation of demons entirely. So we kill our traitors in a swift manner. Yes, only to prevent others from suffering from possible ideas of loose morals. That is why we do these things, Lady Priestess. It's not how we want to live, but it's how we must live," the girl observed as Naruto honestly described his way of life. But despite the fact that his words had some incredible pride, she was still unable to understand. "Does it happen often?" she inquired, and the blonde smiled brokenly. "It gets easier if you pretend the number of people you wish to save is greater than the ones you kill," he said as the young woman took a breather. 47 times now, most of them were mercy killings, but I still took my fellow hunters' lives," he said, clenching his hands. "But I will remember them all, even if God hates me, I will never forget them. Traitors or not, they are my brothers who once dreamed the same dream as I." "And what dream is that?" "To live with you all as people, not as hunters." As the blonde shook his head, she remarked, "You long to be free then?" The blonde gazed up at the sky and grinned as he said, "A fleeting dream is often the best one to have, a dream where even a monster like me can have, right, Nay-san? We are free, but at the same time, lost in this journey," he said cryptically as he left the girl in front of the temple. Pleasant dream, maiden of the gods, he said. As he made his way to Padfoot's house, he thought, I'm home, Naruto said as he arrived at his lover's house, and when she opened the door, he saw that she was wearing a see-through negligee. Are you trying to regain my heat cycle? He asked, obviously excited by her attire. Sorry, I thought you weren't coming, she said jokingly, attempting to conceal her figure. Is everything okay? She asked. He stated, I had to say goodbye to a friend, and the woman expressed concern, understanding that he had to take a life. I want to see you then walk away, she said. I'm just glad you're back safely, Padfoot remarked, reaching out to embrace him. Be a little quiet, my roommate, the big one, came home, follow me, she whispered as they swiftly and stealthily made their way upstairs to her room. The woman wrinkles her nose as she enters her room and says, Naruto, you're purified, the blonde mumbled, using a scroll after realizing what she meant. A tiny light passed over him as the earthy and bloody odor left him. Sorry, I'm so used to blood that it almost comforts me, he said. As the blonde closed his eyes and listened to the soft yet lovely rhythm of her throbbing heart, Padfoot said, I love you, while cradling his head to her nearly nude bosom. I know you're a hunter, and I know you must do horrible things for the right reasons, but I love you because your soul and heart are so kind to people despite what your people asked you to close it off. I understand just. She began before holding him and quickly drew him into her bed. Padfoot, with her hands wrapped around her body and gripped tightly, she said, Please, just rest your woes on me. You don't have to be strong in front of me anymore. It's okay to feel vulnerable. Naruto, I know what I want for my gift, she said, smiling and humming. I want you to call me my name. But that's, he said, looking up at her request. As he gradually grew sleepy, she leaned in and whispered in his ear, I trust you. I want you to call me. Please call me that, even if it's just once, she said. As his thoughts drifted peacefully, he grinned and said, I love you, my Imari. With a tear of happiness streaming down her cheek, the woman grinned broadly and said, Thank you, my dear.